Working the night shift seems quiet, almost too quiet. But when the world goes dark, that's when the strangest things happen. In this video, you'll hear 3 terrifying stories from people who took the night shift, only to realize they weren't as alone as they thought. Stay until the end, because sometimes the scariest things aren't just in the dark, they're watching you from it. Most night shift jobs are boring, predictable. A paycheck for a few hours of solitude. That's what Eric thought when he signed up for warehouse work in Chicago. But on one particular shift, something arrived that wasn't supposed to. A shipment with no records, no labels, just stacks of unmarked boxes. Inside them, something he was never meant to see. Then the cameras went dark, the security feed glitched, and a voice whispered through the intercom, warning him to leave. But the real horror? It didn't end when he clocked out. Stay until the end, because what happened to Eric could happen to anyone. I took the night shift because I needed the money. It wasn't exactly a dream job, just a lonely gig at a fulfillment center on the edge of the city, sorting and logging shipments for a company I'd barely heard of. The pay was decent, the hours were long, and the place was a ghost town after dark. Which, at first, I didn't mind. No customers, no coworkers breathing down my neck. Just me and the steady hum of conveyor belts in a warehouse too big for its purpose. My only real responsibility was scanning incoming shipments, making sure the records matched, and flagging any discrepancies. Simple. Or at least, that's what I thought. But that was before the shipment arrived. It was around 2 a.m. when I noticed them. 2 large wooden pallets, wrapped tightly in black plastic, sitting near the loading dock. I hadn't seen them come in. No one had checked them. No paperwork. No tracking number in the system. I frowned. That wasn't normal. Every package that passed through this facility was logged. Barcodes, tracking numbers, timestamps. It was all automated. There were no exceptions. Yet here they were. I walked over, clipboard in hand, searching for any markings or labels. Nothing. Just 2 unmarked pallets, neatly stacked. A weird feeling crept over me. I glanced toward the security camera in the corner of the warehouse, its red light blinking steadily. Someone had to know about this, right? Someone had to put them here. Still, something about them felt off. Against my better judgment, I reached out and peeled back a corner of the plastic. And that's when I realized I had made a mistake. Inside the pallet were dozens of identical cardboard boxes. No logos, no branding, just plain brown boxes, sealed tight. I hesitated, then lifted one. It was heavier than it looked. I placed it on a nearby workstation, grabbed my box cutter, and sliced through the tape. I pulled back the flaps and froze. Inside the box were documents, stacks of them. They weren't shipping records. They weren't invoices. They were medical files. Hundreds of them. Names, birth dates, hospital records, even photos of people I didn't recognize. Some of the forms looked old, yellowed with time, while others were crisp and new. What the hell was I looking at? I checked the top sheet. Patient name, Christopher Nolan. Status, discharged. But something was wrong. Under discharged, there was a second, smaller note in red ink. It just said, final processing, complete. I flipped through more. Different names, different dates, but the same red note. Final processing, complete. The warehouse suddenly felt colder. I grabbed my radio. Martin, you there? Martin was the security guy on shift with me. His booth was right at the entrance. He was supposed to be monitoring the cameras. Silence. Martin. Nothing. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the employee contact list. Found his number. Dialed. Straight to voicemail. I glanced back at the pallets. That creeping unease was turning into something else now. Something heavier. I need to get out of here. I rushed over to the security booth. The door was unlocked. Martin wasn't there. His radio was still on the desk, the screen flickering, but no sign of him. I turned to the monitors. The camera feed showed the warehouse floor, the loading dock, the storage aisles. Everything looked normal, but when I clicked back through the recorded footage, the timeline had gaps. Between 1:45 and 2 a.m., the cameras had gone dark. And when the feed returned, the pallets were just there. No truck dropping them off, no workers moving them in, just empty space, then suddenly the pallets. I swallowed hard. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had erased the footage. And I had a sinking feeling that someone knew I was looking at it. I turned to leave. That's when the intercom crackled to life. A low, static-filled voice filled the security room. Step away from the monitors. I froze. The voice was calm, collected, not a warning, not a threat, just a statement. I looked up at the speaker. It was an old system, wired throughout the facility, but no one ever used it, not during night shifts. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. Who is this? Silence. Then, clock out and leave. A cold sweat broke over my skin. Something was very, very wrong. I turned back to the cameras, scanning the feeds. That's when I saw it. A figure. Standing near the pallets. They weren't there a second ago. They weren't moving, just standing, watching the camera. And I swear, they were looking right at me. I bolted from the security room. I didn't care about my shift, didn't care about protocol. I just wanted to get out. I ran down the main hall toward the employee exit, swiped my keycard. Red light, access denied. My heart pounded. I tried again. Access denied. The intercom crackled again. Clock out and leave. My stomach twisted. I wasn't getting out through that door. I turned and sprinted toward the loading dock. If the exit was locked, maybe I could slip through one of the bay doors. But when I reached the dock, the pallets were gone. Just gone. No plastic wrap, no boxes. Nothing. Like they had never been there. The intercom crackled one last time. You should go home now, Eric. I didn't wait. I ran back to the front, past the security booth, past the offices, down the emergency stairwell. The door at the bottom opened without a problem. And just like that, I was outside. I quit the next morning. Never went back. Never answered their calls. But a few weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just a small, sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a medical record. Patient name, Eric W. Status, discharged. And beneath it, final processing, pending. I burned it. But some nights when I check my mail, I swear I see another envelope waiting. Imagine working the night shift at an old, nearly abandoned office building. Just you, the security cameras, and the occasional flickering light. For Daniel, it was an easy job, until one night, a locked basement door was left open. What he found inside should have been nothing, just another empty room. But buried in the darkness was something that should not exist, something that rewrote his entire past. And the worst part, he was never supposed to see it. This is the true story of a man who walked into a basement and walked out with a question that may never be answered. I took the job because it was easy. Night security at an old office building downtown. 8 floors, mostly vacant. Just me, the cameras, and the occasional maintenance worker passing through. The building had once been the headquarters of some tech startup that went under. Now, only 2 floors were leased out, one to a law firm, the other to an accounting office. The rest were just empty spaces filled with forgotten desks and flickering emergency lights. I didn't mind the quiet. The shifts were long, but the pay was decent, and the hardest part of the job was staying awake. My routine was simple: make my rounds every hour, check that the doors were locked, glance at the security feed, and try not to let boredom drive me insane. Then, there was the basement. Technically, it wasn't part of my rounds. The building manager made it clear, stay out. The door was always locked, and in 6 months, I'd never seen anyone go in or out. I assumed it was just storage. Until the night, I found it open. It was just after 2 a.m. I had my coffee in one hand, my flashlight in the other, making my usual round. The elevator was slow, so I took the stairs, stopping at each floor to check the hallways. By the time I reached the ground floor, something felt off. Nothing obvious, just a slight change in the air, like the building was holding its breath. Then I saw it. The basement door, usually shut tight, was open by an inch. I stopped. My first instinct was to assume maintenance had left it that way. But why at this hour? I reached for my radio. "Hey, anyone down here?" My voice sounded strange in the empty lobby. Silence. I pushed the door open wider with my foot, shining my flashlight inside. A narrow set of stairs led down into darkness. The air coming from below was cool and stale, carrying a faint metallic scent. I hesitated. I didn't want to go down there. Still, it was my job. If someone was in the building after hours, I had to know. I stepped inside. The stairs creaked under my weight. The flashlight beam barely cut through the thick shadows, revealing a long, low-ceilinged hallway lined with old metal doors. It looked like a storage area. The air was colder down here, making me pull my jacket tighter. "Security," I called out, my voice echoing. "Anyone down here?" Nothing. I moved forward, peering into the first open doorway. Empty, just some metal shelves covered in dust. The second room was the same. Then at the third door I paused. It wasn't just open, it had been forced open. The lock was broken, the frame splintered. I stepped inside. It was a small office, old papers scattered across the floor. A filing cabinet stood open, its drawers hanging loose. Someone had gone through this room. That's when I noticed the papers. They were old employee files, dozens of them, dumped in a pile. Most were from over a decade ago, back when the building belonged to the tech company. I bent down, picking up one of the folders. The name on it meant nothing to me, neither did the next one, but when I grabbed a third, I stopped cold. It had my name on it. I stared at the folder in my hands, my pulse pounding. It was thick, full of documents, but none of it made sense. The first few pages contained basic information: my full name, date of birth, past employment. But the dates were wrong. It listed me as an employee of the tech company, not as a security guard, as an IT specialist. The start date was over 10 years ago. I flipped through the pages, my breathing shallow. According to this, I had worked here for 3 years. But that wasn't possible. I was in college back then, in another state. I kept reading. There were performance reviews, memos with my name on them, a resignation letter with my signature on it. My head spun. This had to be some kind of mistake, a mix-up, someone with the same name, but the details were too specific. Even my emergency contact information was correct. My radio crackled. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Dan, you okay?" It was Tony, the other guard on duty. I swallowed hard, pressing the button. "Yeah, just checking something." My voice sounded shaky. I looked back at the folder, my hands trembling. Then I heard the creak of a door closing somewhere down the hall. I wasn't alone. The noise had come from further down the basement, a door shutting, slowly. I turned off my flashlight. The hallway was dark except for the faint green glow of an exit sign at the far end. My heart pounded as I listened. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Someone was down here. I pressed myself against the wall, forcing my breathing to slow. My hand tightened around the flashlight. The footsteps stopped. A long silence. Then a voice. Daniel. A cold wave washed over me. It came from the darkness ahead. Low. Familiar. I gripped my radio. Tony, I whispered. Get down to the lobby. Now. No response. The radio was silent. The voice spoke again. You shouldn't be here. My pulse hammered in my ears. I didn't wait to find out who it was. I turned and bolted up the stairs. I didn't stop until I was back in the security office, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I rewound the security footage. I went straight to the basement cameras. At 2:47 a.m., I saw myself on the screen, walking toward the basement. The door was slightly open, just as I remembered. I watched as I stepped inside, my flashlight sweeping across the hallway. Then, something changed. The footage glitched. For half a second, the screen turned to static. When it came back, I was gone. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. The hallway was empty. The timestamp kept ticking forward, but I wasn't there. For the next 6 minutes, the footage showed nothing, just the open basement. Then, at 2:53 a.m., the static flickered again. And I was back, standing at the bottom of the stairs, perfectly still. The worst part, I was staring directly into the camera. But I didn't remember doing that. The screen glitched once more. Then the door behind me clicked open. I didn't look back. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and left the building without clocking out. I didn't even bother telling Tony. As I walked out into the cold night air, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. An email. I hesitated, then unlocked my phone. It was from an unknown sender. The subject line was empty, just a single attachment. A scanned document. I opened it. It was a resignation letter. Dated 10 years ago. Signed by me. I never went back to that job. And I never found out who, or what, was waiting in the basement. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I had stayed just a little longer, would I still be here? Some calls should never be answered. It was supposed to be an ordinary night shift at the call center, just another mindless job counting down the hours. But when David answered a call from an unknown number, everything changed. The caller seemed to know him, knew his name, knew things they shouldn't. And then, the instructions began. A door left unlocked, a security feed that showed impossible things, a final call that made him question his own reality. Stay until the end, because some calls are impossible to ignore. I never should have answered the phone. It was my last shift at the call center, a dead-end job with long hours and miserable pay. The kind of place where the overhead lights buzz just enough to give you a headache, and the break room coffee tastes like burnt cardboard. Most people quit after a few months. I lasted a year. It was a Friday night, and the office was practically empty. Just me and one other guy, Mark, covering the late shift. Most of the calls we got were routine, billing questions, account cancellations, the occasional angry customer. But then, at exactly 11:57 p.m., my phone rang. The screen showed no caller ID. I hesitated. This wasn't a personal line. Our system automatically displayed customer names and numbers. Calls without an ID weren't supposed to come through. I glanced at Mark. He had his headset off, scrolling through his phone. He didn't seem to notice. I exhaled and answered. "Thank you for calling First Line Communications. This is David. How can I help you?" For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then a voice. Low, unfamiliar. "I need to cancel my account." Something about the way they said it made the hairs on my arms rise. I cleared my throat. "Of course. Can I have your name or account number?" A long pause. "You already know who I am." I felt a shiver run down my back. I'm sorry, but I don't." A distorted chuckle came through the receiver. "You will." Then the line went dead. I lowered my headset slowly, staring at my screen. The call log was empty. I blinked. That wasn't possible. Every incoming call left a trace, a number, a timestamp, a record in the system. I checked again. Nothing. Mark glanced over. "You good, man?" I hesitated. "Yeah, just a weird call." He smirked. "You mean a Karen?" Something like that. I didn't tell him what the caller had said. I wasn't sure why. For the rest of my shift, I kept glancing at the phone, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. At midnight, Mark grabbed his stuff. "See you Monday." "I'm not coming back," I reminded him. "Tonight's my last shift." "All right." He grinned. "Well, enjoy unemployment." I forced a chuckle. As he left, I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes. Just 3 more hours. I could make it 3 more hours. It was 2:27 a.m. when the phone rang again. No caller ID. I stared at the screen. A slow, uneasy feeling crept up my spine. I should have ignored it, let go to voicemail. But I didn't. I picked up. "First Line Communications. This is David." Silence. Then, the same voice. "Did you miss me?" A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Look," I said carefully, "if this is a prank, it's not funny." A pause. "I told you, you'd know me soon." My hand tightened around the receiver. I glanced at the security camera in the corner of the room. The red recording light blinked steadily. "You're wasting my time," I said. "If you don't have a real request, I'm hanging up." A long, excruciating silence. "Check the back door." Click. The call disconnected. I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. The call was messing with my head. It had to be some kind of joke. Maybe Mar trying to freak me out before I left. But I still found myself walking toward the back of the office. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the exit sign above the back door. I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I reached for the handle. Unlocked. A rush of cold air hit me as the door creaked open slightly. My breath caught in my throat. The door was supposed to be locked. Security always checked at closing. I stepped back, scanning the parking lot outside. The fluorescent streetlights flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows across the asphalt. No movement. No sign of anyone. I closed the door. Locked it. Then I sprinted back to my desk and shut down my computer. I was done. I didn't care about finishing my shift. I just wanted to leave. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed for the exit. The main office was silent, the dim glow of my monitor the only light in the room. The phone rang. No caller ID. I stopped in my tracks. I didn't want to answer. I really didn't. But some part of me, the part that needed closure, forced my hand. Slowly, I picked up the receiver. "David." The voice wasn't distorted this time. It was clear. Too clear. Because it was my voice. I felt my throat tighten. "Who is this?" I whispered. The other me chuckled softly. "You already know." A chill swept over me. The silence stretched. Then the voice spoke again. "Turn around." I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was frozen, my grip tightening around the receiver. I forced myself to breathe. I would not turn around. Instead, I reached for my phone and opened the camera app. With shaking hands, I switched it to selfie mode. Slowly, I lifted it, angling the screen so I could see behind me. At first, I saw nothing. Just the empty office. The row of flickering monitors. The door leading outside. And then the door clicked locked. I heard it. Saw the handle twist. But no one was there. I turned around. The exit was just a door. No locks, no bolts. It had never been locked in the first place. But somehow, I knew I wasn't getting out. The phone in my hand beeped, call disconnected. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, scanning the office, my breath shallow. And then I saw it. The security camera feed on my monitor. One of the cameras showed the back door, the one I had just locked. It was open. Wide open. And just before the feed cut to black, I saw myself walking through it. I don't remember leaving. But when I came to, I was in my car, parked miles away from the office. The sun was rising. My shift was over. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings. No caller ID. I never answer. Because if I do, I know exactly what I'll hear.